So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Buddhist Path of Awakening course. And we are working our way through Volume 1 of the Profound Treasury of the Ocean of the Dharma. These teachings, this is a digest actually. Every year for about 15 years, over an 18-year span, Trungpa Rinpoche took away a group of students, usually 150 to 250, for a retreat, a 3-month retreat every year in the fall, and in different locations. Were meant to be nice locations, but perhaps in their off season so that they were inexpensive. And these retreats were about 3 months in length and divided into 3 parts. The first month would be devoted to the Hinayana teachings, the second to the Mahayana, and the third to the Vajrayana teachings. During these periods, there would be times when, for maybe a week, 10 days at a time, people would do nothing but practice, and then there would be combinations of practice and study for a while. Recently, or more recently, about I don't know how many years ago, Shambhala Publications tasked Judy Leaf with digesting all these talks from all of these seminaries, they were called. And that produced this 3-volume set, Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. They're digests of all those talks over the 15 years. We're working our way through the Volume 1, the Hinayana teachings. And I want to start tonight with a meditation that I think is appropriate to the subject matter. So if you would take a good posture, just for the heck of it. Actually, for this kind of meditation, posture isn't even required, but it helps because mind follows body. And if you adopt a cheerful, alert posture, it helps you to have a cheerful, alert mind. So, good straight back. However you want to arrange your legs. If you're in a chair, feet flat on the floor. If you're on a cushion, your legs will be crossed in one form or another. Hands in whatever meditation mudra you like, eyes open, because we're practicing the combination of mindfulness and awareness. And you bring your awareness right here into this time and place, this space. We live in the middle of a space. The space, in this space, arise and pass away in every instant, any and all of the 6 knowables. These are sights, so here's this gesture, it comes and goes. Your attention is on me at the moment, now it's not. The sight is coming and going. Sounds, like these words, coming and going. Smells disappear less frequently, but when they do, they appear and then they're gone. Tastes, the same. Tactile sensations, now that I mention it, you can be aware of your bottom on the seat. And mental events. Mental events are thoughts of all kinds. This space of awareness is the space of reality. What is unreal is our thoughts, the content of those thoughts, about any and all of this. 2 people can be standing viewing the same thing and yet have very, very different thoughts about it, depending on their past, their karma, you might say, their training, their past experience. One person might like what the 2 of them are viewing and the other person might not. And there can be all kinds of subtle differences. These are the 2 different fundamental kinds of awareness that we're experiencing right now. One is this open field of awareness, which has no thoughts or comments. Although it includes thoughts and comments as they arise and pass away, it's utterly in the moment, full of color, sound, tactile sensation, mental events, and all of that. It is what it is. And then the other kind of mind, you might say, is thinking mind. Thinking mind has opinions, ambitions, judgments, good and bad, hopes and fears. How am I doing? Thoughts about me. This little mind, this is called little mind in the Zen tradition. In the Tibetan tradition, they use the Tibetan word sem to describe this small mind. And what we're doing as we practice is we're letting go of that small mind, which has its opinions and thoughts and comments, and we're coming back to this open field of awareness, which has no particular comment about it. Thoughts and emotions might arise and pass away as we sit here, and we just see them come and go, like everything else. This field is not me. It's what it is, as it is. We rest here in this space of awareness. This is real meditation. When we go back into thinking mind, am I doing it? Am I not doing it? Do I like this? Is this good? Is this bad? Then we're lost in the mind of ego, in the mind of confusion. And when we realize that we're doing that, we see it, we let it go, and we come back and we rest here, now, in this space. Let's just do that for a minute. We'll rest here in this space of awareness. Thoughts can come and go. We don't particularly hang on to them. We give up any effort to do this or that. We're like a child gazing at a painted fresco on the wall. We're just looking at whatever happens to be appearing. There's nothing you should or shouldn't see. Rest. In this space, as you rest here, thoughts arise and pass. And they are like waves in the ocean. The ocean is this ongoing, never-ending awareness. And waves are the momentary mental events that arise and pass away. They can be thoughts like, what's for dinner? They can be awareness of that image on the computer screen and the pink skin and black shirt. And then the focus passes and there's just here, awareness. So we've been given two wonderful metaphors for this. One is that we simply sit like a child looking at a fresco, a small child, just looking at the images painted on the wall, without comment, absorbed. And the other is that it's as though we're in the ocean, and our thoughts are the waves that come and go. They arise and pass away into the ocean of awareness, which is always here, never ending. Okay, so you can relax now. That was a joke. And Barry's going to take over. This is preparation for all three chapters that we're doing tonight, really.
Indeed. Thank you, John. That was wonderful. And before I actually get into the chapter loneliness and joy of discipline, that loneliness is, John just spoke of it. The heart of it is the fact that each of us is experiencing the world through our own eyes and has our own experience. So, anyway, um, so we begin with taming the mind. And we've covered this previously, of course, that the Buddhist path is not about connecting with a divinity of any sort. That is, as he says, we simply follow the Buddha's examples so that our state of mind becomes workable. It's important. Our mind becomes workable. That as long as we're overwhelmed with all of the repetitive, recursive thoughts that just keep going on, it's not very workable. Buddhism is based on taming the mind, he says. And the wildness of discursive thoughts, subconscious gossip, scheming about future, could be tamed with Dilwa and made into part of the path. And I'm always reluctant to go into the Tibetan terms, but Dilwa, I'm sure John can correct me on this. But the idea here is it's a kind of a container that he says it's like a glass that will hold sake, and that what we can do is begin to contain, in a way, all of these discursive thoughts and preoccupations and angst and the stuff that takes us away so much. The wildness of discursive thoughts, subconscious gossip, and scheming about the future could be tamed and made part of the path. And that this is a very interesting concept and a little different from what I've usually encountered. But at the heart of all of this is working with what actually is. The thoughts are there. This is the activity of the mind. Instead of trying to reject it or finding some escape route, you work with it. So out of this taming that we begin to develop and we have been working on through meditation, and like the one we just did, a greater awareness arises, a kind of attentiveness, that it's a new sense of the natural order of things rather than this wild, undisciplined chaos, a sense of conscientious attentiveness. And we can begin to relate to the world in this. And the result can be something that he talks about here as decorum. Yet decorum is a result of conducting yourself with dignity and with awareness of being a decent human being. He says here, decorum is a way to keep your precision, to keep your sense of dignity, your sense of head and shoulders, to maintain your being altogether. Decorum is how to be and how to relate to the world. This is simple, it's direct, it is really about being present. By means, he says, of meditation practice, you make your being and your mind one-pointed. Whatever you do should be done with mindfulness and awareness. In other words, this becomes part of your life. That, as a matter of fact, if you do pursue a regular practice of meditation and study and contemplation, it's going to seep into your life. It just does. And that it can become part of your daily life regardless of circumstances. And that can be transformative, actually. So what we're doing in there is we're choosing to let go of some of the habitual patterns of occupations and distractions and chasing after entertainment and satisfaction of one sort or another. These are unwholesome, right? And that instead we're turning to actions that can be helpful. He says that actually discipline has the flavor of cleaning up messes and restraining from creating new ones. He says when you have developed renunciation, and that's what we're talking about here, is just starting to renounce some of our, the stuff that we've done all our lives before we came to this practice, actually. When you have developed renunciation, you become willing to restrain yourself from unwholesome actions. You begin to develop discipline. And that this is a form of ethics, you might say. But the Buddhist ethics are not a matter of good and evil. They are more a matter of tidiness and sloppiness. That tidiness and sloppiness, it has to do with to the extent that you become really awake to the moment, you can then begin to act with more precision, not sloppy, and therefore more intelligent, more effective. And he says the Buddhist approach is not necessarily to make the world a good world, but to make the world a decent world. That if you are tidy, then you are not creating any chaos for others. And this is important. And the nature of the path, by the way, is that what we're speaking of here is compassion, of course. And the nature of the path is that compassion does begin to develop, and that your effect on those around you becomes more and more important. That's just something that naturally happens. Discipline, he says, is based on basic accommodation and fundamental sanity. That Trungpa considers this to be fundamental self-existing sanity, that rather than following a set of rules, being a good boy or a good girl, and having that sense of behaving yourself to try to gain, approval or something. It's just that as we become better citizens of the world, discipline becomes a part of us. That being tidy, aware of the environment, respectful, this begins to just feel right, natural, and we can experience it as if it were a part of ourselves. And he says, as discipline becomes a reality, it actually abides as an entity in your state of mind. And he also says that this is common belief in Buddhist tradition. It's alive. So you naturally relate with the world as it actually is. That's the point, on the dot. The discipline develops because you're willing to be good in the sense of being pragmatic, precise, and realistic. And this develops with meditation, on and off the cushion, as we begin to cut through the confusion, the dust that is kicked up by our discursive thoughts. The essence, he says, of Hinayana discipline is that one's mind is in the right place. And of course, that place is right here, right now. Mind being in the right place has two categories. One-pointedness or concentration, and discriminating awareness. So One-pointedness, actually, I was just talking about one of those two aspects there. One-pointedness is simply being fully present, awake, experiencing everything directly as it arises. Discriminating awareness, he says, is the intelligence that enables you to relate with the activities of life. It is the awareness of what is happening with no blind spots, you see? So, as we said before, developing this kind of being present, being awake, is not about being removed from the world at all. There is the one-pointedness that's required, but also the intelligence of really becoming fully aware of what's actually going on. He says if you look at Hinayana discipline from another angle, it has to do with loneliness or solitude and the idea of retreat. And here's where we're getting really into what was at the heading of this chapter of loneliness. So, as I was saying before, actually, each of us inhabits our own experience. We are all finding our own way. Coming more and more into the present moment, our awareness grows. That sense, the awareness, the realization of that. He says, you realize that there are no other resources than yourself. So you have to handle your life properly. You know, our natural tendency can be to always looking for a savior or a solution or some sort of magic bullet, magic pill that'll fix things. But even in just our relationships, close relationships, there are no guarantees. There's no guarantee of relationship, of protection. And it's natural, of course, that we may have strong bonds to others and expect that our needs will be met. But there is no one who sees the world through your eyes. We are actually alone. Okay. It looks like I'm running out of time here, so yeah. Okay, let me see. I just want to check ahead to what I felt were some of the more important points. Okay, he says here, unless you have a sense of aloneness, you cannot develop wakefulness. So it is absolutely and utterly important and necessary to feel lonely. Yes, and the thing is that instead of trying to solve loneliness, the experience of it, or find something to distract, or any of that, by turning to the experience of aloneness and recognizing the fact of it, that this is the condition of basic human existence. We're born alone, we leave alone. In between, we have all kinds of relationships and things. But throughout all of that, we can only turn to ourselves for refuge. And when he says that it is absolutely and utterly important and necessary to feel loneliness, that for true wakefulness to happen, you have to be awake to that too. And I guess I'll leave the rest of it for you to read. So, John? No? Okay. Let me see. What do we have? Okay. He introduces the idea of half-hearted loneliness here. He says true loneliness is very definite, but half-hearted loneliness is feeble. With half-hearted loneliness, you are still trying to replace your 50% loneliness with something else. You are still looking for entertainment. So when we experience feelings of loneliness, we may see this as a problem that needs to be fixed, to seek a source of entertainment to dilute these feelings, maybe just take the edge off, as they say. But this always leaves us dissatisfied. It is always a hollow and fruitless endeavor. It is. That, as he says, nothing is really being entertained. In the beginning, you have expectations, but then nothing happens. And that disappointment can be brutal. But at the very least, it can be kind of deadening. This is half-hearted loneliness, moving away from the full experience. But loneliness can be the path by stepping in, leaning into loneliness with curiosity and openness and experiencing it, looking at it, feeling it, accepting the fact of it. He says it is absolutely necessary to relate to aloneness and loneliness because for a long time we have ignored them. And he says somewhere in here also that in our lineage, the discipline of loneliness is part of our lineage. A lonely person could still relate with other people. You can be lonely, alone, and living in the midst of society at the same time. So, yeah, this does not mean going off by yourself someplace. And he says, a lion in the zoo is still a lion. It just means refraining from their habitual distractions. And this is a kind of renunciation for sure. He says, with renunciation, you would like to give something up deliberately by choice. But loneliness doesn't give you any choice. It comes to you automatically. That is why the path of loneliness is so helpful. That this experience of, I've heard this from many people, some of whom were pretty new to this path, have started to talk about this, like they're starting to get it, that, you know what, it's just me. So working with this can be part of the path. Let me see. I'm just looking ahead a bit here. It says, from that quality of aloneness, you begin to realize that not only are you alone, but you have very little to complain about. And he then goes on to say that according to the Buddhist tradition, seeing the helplessness of one's own experience is the only way to look at things helpfully. That, you see, as you're beginning to understand that there's nothing to do here, there's nothing that you can control. You can't control the world and your circumstances. That this is seeing the helplessness of one's own experience. But this is a very useful view. That we can't dictate our experience and that we are basically alone. But of course, this also means that we can do something about it. You do not have to seek out loneliness. It is always there, he says. Egolessness, I like this. Egolessness is a concept, a philosophy, but loneliness is a reality that you experience. And actually, this is the end of the chapter here. I'll just read this last part. He says that a feeling of loneliness is part of the journey. And you begin to make discoveries you discover devotion, and you discover a quality of richness and artistic expression that is very special. See, being you, but not being you. It is very resourceful. You become a complete mountain man. You know how to make fire and cook food, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. You're still nobody. That is the inspiration. There's a lot more in this chapter. I was amazed when I went back to review it for this class. So, anyway, John.
Thank you, Barry. The next chapter is called Taming the Neurotic Mind. All three of these chapters are based on the difference between neurotic mind. I gave you the word sem. It's a Tibetan word which refers to neurotic thinking, little mind, as opposed to big mind, which the Tibetans call by different names. One of them is yeshe, which means primordial wisdom. We have them both. Yeshe is the ongoing, unstoppable awareness right now that you have of everything that's going on for you in the moment. Your feet on the floor, your eyes on this computer screen, your ears tuned to this voice. It's unstoppable. Yeshe, ongoing awareness. Sem is thoughts about it, thoughts about me, what I'm saying, thoughts about yourself. Do I like this? Do I not like this? Do I understand it? Do I not understand it? What's for dinner? What am I going to do when this is over? And we get lost in that little mind. Aloneness is all about giving up that little mind. That little mind is always looking for company, reassurance, reinforcement. And it's coming back to this very silent, open, clear awareness that is here, that has very little implication, if any, about what I should do. It's very quiet, this awareness, but it's lit, it's luminous with whatever happens to be arising in it, including thoughts, which are like waves in the ocean. So really what this path is about shifting one's awareness, shifting one's loyalty, as Rinpoche said, from little mind, thinking mind that likes and dislikes and plans and for the future and regrets the past and all of those things, shifting one's loyalty from that, which is always about the past and the future, to this, which has no implications. It might be a little scary because we wonder, well, what am I supposed to do with this? What am I supposed to do with this? And the answer is, there is no supposed. You just react. You do what's necessary. When a person in this present moment says hello to you, you respond hello back. If they give you affection, you appreciate that in the moment and you give it back. In the moment, without thinking. So this chapter is called Taming the Neurotic Mind. That's the little mind. He says the Hinayana begins with taming the mind, which is straightforward. How do you do this? How do you tame the mind? By relating with things as they are in the big mind, in yeshe, in primordial wisdom, by relating with the things as they are in that present moment, space. That's how we tame neurotic mind. He says in sitting practice, you experience body, mind, and breath. This is what's there. Anything else is not being worked on. Anything else means all the thoughts that come up. What am I going to do about lunch? Am I getting anywhere with this practice? Oh, my knee hurts. I don't think I can understand this. All of that is baloney. Anything else is not being worked on. It is extra paraphernalia, he says. Just concepts. Just ideas that come and go. This present moment awareness does not come and go. The contents of it change, but the present moment where awareness is always with us. This is the true aloneness. Now he talks about 4 mental obstacles. It's good to recognize what your screw-ups are. And these all take place at the level of the 5th skandha of ego, the fully developed ego. There are 5 levels of ego, which we'll go through at some point in this volume. The 5th, it's called consciousness in English, vijnana in Sanskrit. He says that these 4 obstacles are: number 1, stupidity. It's a state of mind that isn't opened or informed. It is uneducated, not inquisitive enough. You see, being awake here in the present moment, inquisitiveness is a natural quality of enlightened mind, constantly interested in everything that's going on. Stupidity isn't inquisitive. It's just self-absorbed. He says you need inquisitiveness about what you're doing, rather than sitting back and being lazy. If you're uneducated, it's your own fault. Just haven't taken the effort to be inquisitive. Inquisitiveness just needs openness and the willingness to look into situations and understand them. The obstacle of stupidity means that you have not been inquisitive enough to learn. And in fact, what they say about enlightened mind, totally enlightened mind, at the end of the path, when you get completely enlightened, and there's nothing more to do on the path, because you've gotten enlightened and there's nothing more beyond that, then what that enlightened person does is that they explore, play with, and make love to the world. An endless, endless opportunity to be inquisitive. I remember Trungpa Rinpoche said that this was back in the heyday of Sony and Matsushita and computerization and televisions. They were making all these technological advances. And he said that when he died, he didn't want to come back as a teacher. He wanted to come back as a Japanese scientist. This idea of inquisitiveness, of the joy of exploration, which is absent in little mind. Little mind is all about me, getting stuff. The second obstacle is mindlessness, absence of awareness. You're unaware of yourself. You're unaware of the world. You're completely lost in these dreams, which color our understanding of who I am and what the world is. He says, in contrast, awareness, contrast to mindlessness, is based on curiosity and inquisitiveness. We're not lost in a world of thinking. We're open, registering everything. Awareness is a natural instinct, but it is subverted by irritation, which makes us push things away so we lose our natural awareness. And in doing so, we can go lower than animals, which have very little inquisitiveness. Everything an animal does is very, very repetitive. The gadgets of the modern world make us lazy and mindless. And I just wrote to myself, you can always Google it. Whatever it was. And I remember, I've told this story about seeing a guy on a bus in New York wearing a t-shirt. And on the front it said, I don't need Google. And then underneath it, it said in smaller letters, my wife knows everything. We rely on these things. He says, like Google, we've relied on all kinds of things that allow us not to have to work hard. And when he wrote this, or said this, Google wasn't even in existence. Our awareness is diminished, and with it, our curiosity and our intelligence. The third of the mental obstacles is emotional upheavals, kleshas. The first 3 are fringe to kleshas, ways of copping out of the emotions. That means stupidity, being dumb, mindlessness. You're unaware of yourself and others. You're just lost in dreams. People have different dominant kleshas. One person is lust, another person is jealousy, another person is anger. But people usually want to be something or someone important. So they express themselves in terms of the 3 basic poisons: passion, aggression, and indifference. or the 5 or 6 kleshas, which include pride, jealousy, passion, animal stupidity, a feeling of worthlessness and hunger, and hatred, anger, fear. Those 6. Sometimes they're 5, sometimes they're 6. When you see a tantric deity in a tanka, they often are wearing a crown with 5 skulls, and that represents 5 of these kleshas. So, yeah, the 4th one, did I cover this? It's lack of faith, not having enough faith in yourself. You give up feeling that you're dumb. There's no point in trying to understand the teachings. Faith is the confidence that you could be aware, truly aware, that you could know what is real, this, and think for yourself, he says. You know you can do it. It's a kind of surrendering to oneself. Surrendering what? Surrendering self-attack, surrendering lack of confidence. It's not based on confidence that you will get the reward. Faith is knowing that this is the right path. This coming back into simple awareness based on actual experience. One of the things that makes it hard to come back to this simple, ongoing, complete, clear awareness is that we have no security in it. I wants to know, where am I? Could somebody give me a grade on this? I'm like an 80% or better. There is none of that. You're coming back to the open dimension of this. And there is no pointer saying, this is the right way to do it, that's the wrong way. Except not to go into dream and to come back to the awareness of this. So we're really entering an open dimension. So the role of meditation is to relate to the 4 mental obstacles, and you need basic meditative training. Shamatha, the development of peace. In shamatha, you witness your stupidity because you see your thoughts arising over and over again. Your unawareness, your emotional upheavals, you see them all the time. And your faithlessness, that you can't be loyal to, this clear open awareness. By doing so, you're taming your mind. By witnessing these things, you're beginning to shift your loyalty. Taming does not mean making everything smooth and good. It means that you feel there is a relationship taking place between you and your mind. You're beginning to wake up. You're beginning to give your allegiance to this intelligence that lives within you instead of to fear and self-attack. Becoming a great meditator is not it. Sitting for an hour without thoughts or something else, that's not the point. Taming the mind means that some kind of friendship is taking place between those 4 obstacles and you. You discover that you're not just the wild, hopeless person you thought you were. The basic point of Hinayana training is the conviction that you can practice even along with your problems. And what the practice means is that you recognize the stupidity, you recognize the lack of faith, you recognize the lack of confidence, and you come back to this. That's how we practice. The point is that you can do it because somebody else did not. You can do it because somebody else did not become enlightened and still was a follower of the path. That's an interesting statement. I wrote that down. Just means that you can follow the path and you don't have to worry about accomplishment. It comes. Meditation is very important. You cannot keep the basic discipline of being aware without the practice of meditation. It brings out the details of the 4 mental obstacles, and it brings out their positive counterparts as well. which is awareness, confidence. Then he just concludes by saying Marpa and Milarepa, had faith and knew how to handle themselves, and because of that, something actually happened in their states of being, so they could walk on the spiritual path. It's all about shifting our allegiance from neurotic thinking mind that has these four obstacles of stupidity, because we're lost in dreams, mindlessness, same thing really, emotional upheavals, and lack of faith, and shifting our allegiance from that to this clear, open awareness that is with all of us, all the time, now. So Philip, take over for the last of these 3 chapters.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Barry. So this chapter, Cutting the Root of Samsara, there's a lot here. You could look at this chapter through the lens of the Four Noble Truths, which will be discussed in great detail in part 4 of our book. But put simply, these are: life is characterized by suffering. The cause of this suffering is craving. And fundamental ignorance, the delusion of ego. 3, there is a way out of this suffering. And 4, the path is the way out. Or in very simple English, you could say that this chapter is about how to control your lust and your anger. In this chapter, there are many, many major concepts that are only skimmed over right on the surface, or even just alluded to. But it's good for you to be introduced to their names at least. And there are a few key ideas that are examined in depth, namely discipline, Shila, mindfulness, and the gap. So let's jump right in. This is paragraph 1. Discipline is said to cool off the heat of neurosis and bring about the best behavior of body, speech, and mind. It is what delivers us to individual salvation. The logic of the Buddhist approach is to cut karma altogether at its root. And the way to do so is by means of mindfulness, discipline, and renunciation. It is by refraining from mindlessness and the desire to occupy ourselves with neurosis. Okay, so what does this mean? Let's unpack this first paragraph. Discipline, Shila. In our text, there's a glossary, if you don't know that, toward the back of the book, starting on 573. And it defines discipline, Shila, Sultram, as proper conduct, noble character, morality. Discipline is sometimes translated as ethics. Shila in Buddhism is one of 3 sections of the Noble Eightfold Path, and it's a code of conduct that embraces a commitment to harmony and self-restraint, with the principal motivation being nonviolence, or freedom from causing harm, right? That's the heart of the Hinayana, not causing harm. The heart of the Mahayana, you could say, is actively doing good. Discipline has been variously described as virtue, moral discipline, and precept. Discipline, Shila, is an internal, aware, and intentional ethical behavior according to one's commitment to the path of liberation. It is an ethical compass within self and relationships, rather than what is associated with the English word morality, i.e., obedience, a sense of obligation, and external constraint. So I'm spending time on this because this whole section of the book is on discipline. This last sentence is pointing out the difference between Buddhism, a non-theistic philosophy, which is totally from within us, the difference between that and theism, which is outside of us. There's no God in Buddhism telling us what to do. It all comes from within. In simple English, Shila is taking personal responsibility for being a decent human being. That's what it's all about. So Chogyam Trungpa has talked about this before. In chapter 3, he says the Hinayana understanding is structured according to 3 key principles: discipline, meditation, and knowledge, or Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna. And in chapter 4, he talks about discipline as controlling one's mind or being and bringing it into a state of tranquility through shamatha practice. He says, without discipline, life is made up of successive indulgences and confusion based on aggression, passion, and ignorance. Those are the 3 poisons, the big kleshas that John was just talking about. The accomplishment of discipline is based on renunciation. John was talking about that too. And here it doesn't mean giving up your home and your family and entering a monastery. It means letting go of the dream and coming back to the present moment. Chogyam Trungpa says, and renunciation is inspired by experience that is beyond samsara. And there he's talking about openness, reality, space and awareness, emptiness, shunyata. These are all huge ideas that he's hitting on. They're the foundation for what this chapter is about. The Shila principle is based on waking up a natural instinct. And that's another huge idea. Basic goodness, Buddha nature, bodhicitta. That's where it all comes from. So in this paragraph, he talks about karma, and Westerners get hung up on that, particularly because it's married to the notion of rebirth. But for us here now, we could think of karma as simply the law of cause and effect. You do something and there's a result. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when he's teaching karma to Westerners who are just starting off, puts it this way. He says, you make a mess today, you have to clean it up tomorrow. That's karma. Mindfulness is talked about in this first paragraph. That's the here and now, the present moment. Renunciation, what John was talking about, shifting allegiance from the dream to reality, the present moment, the here and now. And then he moves on and he talks about a couple of large structures of samsara, if you want. So we're in the middle of the second page here. The first is what's called the expansion of what is minute. He says, samsara is generated from a very simple and minute beginning. That is, whenever a simple little desire, a simple little aggression takes form, we hang on to it. We begin to capitalize on it and to exaggerate it. As we exaggerate the whole thing, the end product becomes gigantic. We have created a mile out of an inch. This is the expansion of what is minute. That is how things work in our samsaric world. The second big structure, well, let me give you an example there because I don't want to go too fast. So we do that all the time. So like in Western terms, we talk about a specific criticism immediately going into global criticism, like leave a dirty pot in the sink, right? And my spouse says, you've left a dirty pot in the sink. You always leave dirty pots in the sink. Plus you leave your socks on the floor. You leave dirty clothes all over the bedroom. You know, you're basically just a slob, and your brother's a slob. Your whole family is sloppy. And this whole thing just occurs like that. It's the Buddhists talk about, they use this metaphor. You light a match and you can burn down a mountain. So that's the expansion of what is minute. The second thing is a perverted notion of what is going on. It's the second structure of samsara that Chogyam Trungpa talks about here. A perverted notion of what is going on. And basically what he's talking about here is rewriting reality to fit a pre-existing story, right? He uses this sentence, I'll probably repeat it. The mind begins to change the message of reality by imposing its preconception on things. Why would we do that? Well, Ego is a big part of that. Laziness is a big part of that. Stereotypes, which moves on into prejudice, intolerance, which moves on to things like racial profiling and discrimination. The mind begins to change the message of reality by imposing its preconceptions on things. We begin to create our own world out of our own desire or aggression. And then we're on the middle of page 140 now. He moves into the heart of the chapter. He says, intense aggression in the present will result in our being unable to escape from undesirable situations in the future. That's karma. So the only way to prevent the results of karma is to cut the present situation. And the way to do so is through mindfulness practice. Because you are being mindful, you do not follow desires when they come up. Those desires might seem meaningless at the time. Nevertheless, you don't follow them. Although they seem to be very small in proportion, if you cut an inch of small desires, in the long run, you are cutting a mile of larger desires. So cutting desires an inch at a time goes a long way. So it's here, if you think about this, where the different definitions of Shila come together. It's both discipline and ethics. So I want to do this. A lit match can cause a mountain to burn up, to be on fire. We can learn to extinguish the match before the mountain ignites. That's what this chapter is about. He follows by saying, knowing how karma begins right at the beginning seems to be the key point. We begin by planting seeds of memory in our alaya consciousness. So there's another large idea, but don't be put off by it. At the level of our alaya consciousness, the faculty of cognitive mind already exists, and rejecting and accepting begin to take place. That is the point at which shamatha practice begins to become very effective. What we are trying to do in shamatha is to tackle that level of alaya consciousness. We are trying to plant a seed of mindfulness awareness in the alaya consciousness. So to help you through that, this is how we extinguish the match, by establishing the habit, the seeds of mindfulness in our alaya consciousness. The alaya consciousness is the storehouse consciousness. It's the 8th level of consciousness where all karmic seeds, good and bad, are preserved. You can think of these as potential, as the origin of all actions for good or for bad. And this is where we need to establish mindfulness, most of all, right at the beginning, when things are small. You don't need to think of karma and karmic seeds and the alaya consciousness as strange and foreign ideas. Every one of us who has ever nurtured a grudge already knows what a negative karmic seed in the alaya consciousness is. Little thoughts go to big thoughts, which go to emotions, which go to speed and actions. And this happens faster than I can say the words. That's how it works. From there, he moves into the gap, which is another huge concept. He says, with mindfulness, there's a quality of openness or gap. He says, gaps are opportunities for you to plant something positive in your mind. You can plant shamatha in your mind in the form of mindfulness awareness. So the gap is really a large concept, and I want to hit on that a little more. It's a little word for a vast idea. A gap is the place where the mind stands still. A gap is the space at the end of the out-breath. It's the space between thoughts. Thoughts are not a seamless continuum. Thoughts are individual, discrete. They're just jammed together. A tiny space exists between them, like the space between sentences on a page. So look at your book. You're looking at a white page, and it's covered with black ink. And the ink is formed into shapes that make letters, that make words, that make sentences. Each sentence ends with a period, a full stop, and there's a small space. That's like the gap. And you can go through that to the white page below, behind, beyond all of those words. And we can do that with our thoughts. The gap is of the same nature as space and awareness, as openness, as emptiness, as shunyata, the nature of mind, the nature of reality. The gap is an entry point into all of this. Okay, to tie all of these preceding strands together, there's a gap, a nanosecond, between the initial recognition of experience, right? You see somebody walk into a room. There's just, we're humans, it's visual. There's just shape and color. So between the initial recognition of experience and the immediate layering on of our preconceived notions, these piles of ego things, these exaggerations and judgments of ours, these notions always follow instantly at light speed. This is the ego at work. It's desperately trying to solidify its own existence, to maintain the delusion, to paper over that gap that would otherwise expose its own fraudulence. So stay with me here. This is the heart of this chapter, this gap. We can develop the habit of mindfulness and learn to recognize this gap. We can learn to exercise agency at this point. Out breath, dissolve, let go. We can cut the root of samsara right here, pause and reset. We don't have to be slaves to our thoughts, victims of our emotions. We can choose freedom. We can choose to simply let our thoughts and emotions go while they are still small, still the size of a match flame. Learn to recognize the gap that follows the initial experience. Learn to expand that gap. Learn to see that our thoughts and emotions are simply creations of our own minds, and let them go. Through mindfulness, learned in meditation, through mindfulness established as habit, out-breath, dissolve, let go. On some level, we've known this all our lives, right? It's not so different from what our mothers and grandmothers told us. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and count to 10. Or sometimes they said, a stitch in time saves 9, or an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's all the same idea. What Chogyam Trungpa is teaching us here is how things work. It's an enormous lesson. There are 3 related things I wanted to put in here. 3 ideas that are part and parcel of what we're talking about. 3 more big concepts. Pain comes with the territory of being human, but suffering is optional. 2, our problems are created in our minds. 3, from His Holiness the Dalai Lama again. Anger is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. So it comes down to this: discipline, sitting practice, establishing mindfulness as a habit, recognizing the gap where and when it occurs, cutting the storyline before the story can become established. This is cutting the root of samsara. Chogyam Trungpa finishes this chapter by extolling the virtues of mindfulness and the gap. And we're halfway down page 141 now. He says, wherever there is a gap, just be present, be mindful, just be there. Expand the space. Each moment of openness is an opportunity. Allow yourself a little gap, a little space, which has a kind of spark and delight in it. It is the starting point of mindfulness. He says, mindfulness is extra bliss. He says, when renunciation, and again, what he's talking about here is what John is describing as the shift from dream to reality, from the past and the present to the past and the future to the present moment. When renunciation is planted as a habitual pattern in your Aya consciousness, as part of the fundamental mindfulness process, your experience becomes fundamentally good. You have something else going on beyond the immediate hassle of the moment. You have mindfulness. We can always experience the joy of being alive as human beings, he says. The way to appreciate life is to be mindful. Otherwise, you cannot really appreciate your life at all. Mindfulness equals appreciation. Just breathe. Appreciate the fact that you are alive right here, right now. Someday your breath will become only air. The takeaway from this chapter is to establish a daily practice. Frequency is much more important than duration. 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at night, 7 days a week is infinitely better than the same 70 minutes spent in a single long session once a weekend. Make your practice a habit. Same time, same place. Meditate with others. John's group, this group, the Path of Awakening, meets every day at 9 in the morning Eastern Time and at 9:15 in the morning and at 7 in the evening Eastern Time every day. I just want to finish by saying this. I listened to a person complain recently who insisted she couldn't meditate because her life was so busy, there was no time in it for a meditation practice. And she talked about that. And indeed, her life did sound very busy. It sounded horrible, actually. Her life sounded like California in the summer, ridge after ridge after ridge of mountains on fire. Learn to blow out the match. Carve out time to meditate now. Make daily practice a habit. Make mindfulness a habit. Learn to identify the gap. Learn to expand the gap. Allow yourself to enter a world that's not distorted by preconception and prejudice. Strive to live in that world. That is my prayer for each of you. That's what I have to say.
Oh, you're muted, John.
And you're muted and we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I said, thank you, Philip. That was really wonderful. And we could have discussion.
Looks like Christine has her hand up.
Oh, Christine.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I don't have the book, but like I've been following on the Zooms for quite some time now, but I've just been hearing what's been spoken. But I'm finding it all very interesting and hoping to have the PDF file soon, thanks to Dan. But I have to say that I liked and I'm going to foul up the name. Rinpoche Trungyen. Would somebody help me with his name, please?
Sure,
Our
again,
teacher. Yeah, I like his idea of decorum. I hadn't really thought like that before, of decorum as part of training the wild mind. But I think what I wanted to kind of comment on was that gap and decorum, and the gap being so incredibly important. I mean, that is your door left ajar into awareness. But the gap, it also is a big reminder that exactly we think linearly, like we think one thought at a time, even though we may seem like, no, our head's just a jumbled up mess of thoughts, just right, like on top of each other, merged. No, it's all linear. And once we can see that gap, I think that's the beginning of where we can start with the decorum, start with proceeding, first learning that it's linear, and then learning that, we don't have to pay attention to all of it. And, before you know it, there we are, we're stepping with decorum through our thoughts. So I thought the decorum was a really, really nifty way of looking at how to use, for one way to use the gap. And I realized that, yeah, I don't want to take everybody's time, but I did have a question. The question was, where does attention, there's awareness, the broad awareness that illuminates everything. There's thoughts, there's thoughts, and there's distractions and such. Now, but when one actually focuses on something, now let's say, I'm sitting here and I'm just sort of gazing at everything, and then all of a sudden, a fly lands on my little light here, and my attention, my focus is drawn to it, my attention, and I actually might start looking at it, looking at the wings, like really putting attention on it. So where does attention, the actual faculty of attention, what is that? Is that a quality of, well, it has to be a quality of mind, I guess, but where would that fit in with what mind offers? I've always had a problem, kind of like attention is not quite mindfulness, like a full fly. Like if I was really looking at that fly and seeing the veins and the wings and, and all that, and getting like really absorbed in this very attention wise, what is that quality of the mind? I hope I've made that kind of clear, or I can try to expound, but.
I think you've made it crystal clear.
Okay, great.
Thank you. And Christine, I think in the future, first of all, if you put your email in chat, one of us will send you the PDF of the book. And in the future,
Yes.
you need to read the book before you come to class.
Yes, I will try absolutely to do that.
Yeah. So please do that. Philip, Larry, you want to talk about attention?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. It is very important. It is awareness in the present moment. It's fully inhabiting the world that you exist in.
But it seems so constricted. Like, let me take the fly example again.
No, excuse me, Christine. It's not
Sorry.
restricted, only if you make it so. It's a natural function of consciousness that when one comes present, one is attentive to whatever is going on. It's the Sanskrit word is smriti, the Pali is sati, and there's a practice called satipatthana, which is the practice of simply coming back to awareness. And that's where attentiveness lives. It's in the awareness of the present moment.
Yes, it's the absolute opposite of restrictive. It's as expansive as the universe.
Yeah. If I could actually, I think there is some confusion there. There is absorption in something. If you're studying the fly and starting to really get absorbed in studying it, that's very different. That's not just awareness, that's absorption.
That's what I'm speaking of, and I may be miscalling it attention.
Okay. I think we need to have open this up for other people who have questions. Darla.
Darling.
I don't know if I can describe this that well, but it's been a few weeks ago I had an experience and I just thought it was interesting where I was getting caught up in this fear and this situation that happens or has happened in the past. And I was telling somebody, and all of a sudden I started saying, whoa, where am I going? Whoa, why did I do that? That's not even happening now. And I just felt it. So it was really interesting that meditation kind of went there, right? I was aware that I was doing something and I wasn't in touch with reality. And I also keep thinking about when you're writing fiction, you want your sentences to be transparent. You don't want people to pay attention to them. And the more that you can achieve that, the better, so that they get to the experience. And I was thinking, well, how do I do that? And I think one of the ways is with details. So I know there's a lot of ways that I could keep thinking about that. It wouldn't make sense, but in a lot of ways, it seems so much when I'm thinking of writing, it compares to, what we're trying to achieve here. So, and being in the moment. But it was kind of cool when that happened and I caught myself. So
That is cool. That's an example of something I was saying before about how this practice starts to seep into the rest of your life, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I think definitely with good fiction, you are present in the here and now. That's the magic of fiction.
and you want people to be in the experience, not in just the words. You want them to disappear.
And it is magic. So one of the things that's astounding about humans is our speech, right? And so we can share minds, and we can share, and with literacy, we can share minds across time and space. It's astounding.
Here we're doing it.
We're doing it.
Oh, Kyle.
Kyle has his hand up.
Yeah. Man, part of you just wants to sit in that for a minute. Humans have the ability to share minds, not just in the present, but across time and space through writings or on Zoom. I don't know. That's so cool. There are just a few things from the readings that stuck out to me. I don't even know if I have questions, but just with the whole mental obstacles and the whole like solution almost seemed to be like curiosity or sense of like I don't know or inquisitiveness, which I thought was interesting. And the most important or interesting thing from that chapter is Susan always teaches that the Buddha is an example of someone who's human just like us, but attained liberation from suffering, which I found fascinating. But Trungpa Rinpoche in his book says that the Buddha is an example of someone who's not enlightened, but still walks the path. And I don't know, that just hits. I don't know if you have any comments on that, but yeah, there's a snowballing of karma, or like Trungpa Rinpoche's definition of karma being cleaning up after yourself, rather than like expecting someone else to clean up after you. And I feel like people always ask me like, oh, what is karma? Is it like what goes around comes around? I always have trouble like answering people like, what is karma? I really like that definition. It's like cleaning up after yourself. If you make a mess, you have to clean it up. You're not expecting that your wife's gonna do the dishes for you. I don't even know if there was a question there. That really hit me. And I've read this book a couple years ago, and I still remember this chapter at the end. He says about like meditating and cutting karma. I don't know why that stuck with me so much, but yeah. Thank you guys.
One way to understand karma is that we develop habits which lie in our unconscious, as Freud and his daughter called it. In Buddhism, about 1,500 years before Freud, they called it the alaya, the storehouse consciousness. So, for instance, you've developed an aversion to a particular kind of person, and you're not seeing that kind of person right now, but that aversion is stored in your memory. And suddenly you see somebody who reminds you of that person, and the aversion springs forward, and you place it on that person, whether that person that you're seeing deserves it or not. That's karma. That's how karma controls us. It makes us have a reaction in this instance that I'm describing, which may be totally inappropriate. Maybe this person's a really nice person, but they remind you of a person that irritated you in the past. And so when you see them, that irritation, it springs to memory, springs out of your memory and into consciousness. This is how karma controls us. And then you might avoid that person or say something rude to that person, or who knows what you'll do. Or even if you do nothing, you avoid them and you just don't say anything. So karma is constantly controlling us. And the only way to undo it is with awareness, with mindfulness awareness. And the mindfulness awareness is of, you might say, two different aspects. One is you're mindfully aware of the person who's standing in front of you. And the other is that you're mindfully aware of what they remind you of, that memory from the past. And when you bring that memory, that habitual pattern, I had an angry mother, confession time. And when I meet people who remind me of her, I can feel the reaction in my body, you know? Even though that person may be utterly different, my reaction may be totally inappropriate. That's karma. And the only way to work with it is to bring it to awareness. When you bring it to awareness, you begin to burn it up. If you don't bring it to awareness, it just repeats over and over. This is the teaching. In fact, I've told this before, but they say that you burn it up. This is a very Buddhist thing. You know, in early Buddhism, well, for hundreds and hundreds of years, they didn't have no printing presses. In fact, there was hardly any writing at the time of the Buddha, if any. And so the teachings were told with numerical categories, 5 of these, 6 of those, 4 of the others, all of that, to help people remember. They were mnemonic devices to help people remember. Well, these devices, one of them was with regard to this idea of burning up karma, like a thought that lies in your unconscious of the angry mother until something triggers it, is to bring it to awareness, and it gets burnt up, according to the Buddhist teachings, in 81 grades. Truly, 81 grades of intensity. And the first grade is strong, strong, strong. And the second grade is strong, strong, medium. And the third grade is strong, strong, weak. And the fourth grade is strong, medium, strong. Get it? Until you get down to nothing. 81 grades. But you can take that figuratively. But it is gradual. This thing of bringing it to awareness can be, especially if it's a very strong and powerful inclination in your mind. This is how karma controls us. We have so many of these habits, and the only way out of them is with mindfulness awareness practice. It is the key to everything. It not only frees us from these karmic chains, these karmic bonds, but it helps us appreciate our lives fully, beautifully, more and more, the more we come present.
I think we're about out of time here.
Oh my gosh, we are. Okay, I'll put the chants up. Who's going to lead the chants? Who led them before? Was it anybody? Sarah, if I put the chants up, would you lead us?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh boy, cool.
Oops. Mute everybody. So Sarah, mute yourself.
We will close with a prayer for peace, and then by dedicating the merit generated by our practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. By the blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world, and may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to live lovingly with each other. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Just want to say that this last quatrain, by the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, is really talking about what we've been talking about tonight. The lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom blooming. The world opens up when we begin to practice this kind of awareness, this mindfulness awareness, and we begin to see it in its true beauty. And the dark ignorance of sentient beings, that's all our karma. Our habitual patterns, our judgments, our hopes and fears about the past and the future is dispelled. And may all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. That's what's being opened up by everything that Barry, I, and Philip have been talking about tonight, and what Jim Burbage described. So, something to remember as we chant this.
Thanks, John, Barry, everyone.
Thanks, John. That was
Everybody.
great.
John, Barry, Philip,
Thank
Sarah,
you.
everybody.
See you all.
See you
Good
later,
night.
alligator.
Bye.
Wild crocodile.
Yeah.
Christine, please put your email in chat so that I can send you this PDF.
She already
Oh.
made an arrangement with Don.
Oh, she did.
Dan.
Yeah, but Dan, but
But you're not-
the other link I would appreciate. Yeah, so I'll send you my email.